Hey, this is Matt once again. What about the video? Did a paid request this time from RB. Very nice guy. Thank you so much. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, reviews, re-reviews, randomness, out of the blues, whatever it may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, he wanted me to talk about an episode of Dark Side of Comedy, which I'd never heard of this before, but Vice, that channel, they have been doing this thing called Dark Side of the Ring, which actually RB has me reviewing one of those episodes, which will be either before or after this. I don't know when it'll be uploaded, but I've watched a couple Dark Side of the Rings, the darker aspects of wrestling. Pretty interesting program. So then, I guess because of the success of that, because it's been on for quite a few seasons, they're now doing other aspects, in this case, comedy. From what I understand, this season, it debuted in 2022, and they've done episodes on Andrew Dice Clay, Roseanne Barr, John Belushi, I guess was it Brett Butler? The lady that was on that TV show Grace Under Fire from way, way back in the day. I can't remember her name, actually. I think it was Brett Butler, somewhere around there. And this episode on Chris Farley. And I will say this, I think they should just stick with wrestling. I don't think this episode was bad. It's just you could really just get the whole thing from watching that documentary, I Am Chris Farley. I Am Chris Farley, to me, no, is it longer, but you got more people involved. It's telling a bit more of Chris's story, the highs and lows. And for the most part, the information you didn't hear, other than a few little tidbits, you heard in I Am Chris Farley. So I'm sitting here knowing this just seems rather redundant in a way. I'm sitting there going, if you've seen I Am Chris Farley, or if you haven't, just go watch that instead. There's really no reason to watch this episode. And don't get me wrong, it's not a badly produced episode. I mean, Vice, for the most part, they do a good job producing this stuff in terms of production quality, in terms of editing, in terms of, like Dark Side of the Ring, they'll have certain reenactments where they get, like, okay, there's a story here where David Spade and this other SNL cast member, Melanie Hutzel, they went down an elevator. They're going to go to like a McDonald's, and it was actually down an elevator, and they open up the door, and there's Chris Farley. You tell he's on some drugs. They get him in, and they're trying to hide him. And when the doors open up, it's Lorne Michaels, the big guy behind Saturday Night Live. Like, okay, that was an interesting story. I don't know if it justified the whole 45-minute episode or such. You get a couple people interviewed: Chris Kattan, Tom Arnold, Tom Farley, one of Chris Farley's brothers, Melanie Hutzel. I hope that's how you pronounce her last name. She was on SNL at the time. Leif Garrett, because he's one of the guys that met Chris later on, during his drug days. But like I said, if you've seen that, nothing in here really comes as much of a shock. Because it goes into, he was in Chicago, and then he got to SNL, and he was pretty popular, doing characters like the Matt Foley character, living in a van down by the river. The Chippendales episode, they mentioned that, okay, in the second season, there's that incident that happened with the elevator. Again, that was one of the few interesting nuggets of info from someone who was there. And that in 1992, he started 3 years of sobriety. He did Tommy Boy. And then 94/95, there was a downward spiral of SNL. I wish they delved more into that. Like, if they do this type of thing, it doesn't have to be the dark side of comedy. Just stuff that were short lived but became a massive failure. Uh, you could call it the failures of comedy or the down spiral, downward spiral of comedy or the rut of comedy. Short lived stuff like the Chevy Chase show or that one year in SNL that was considered one of the worst years. We had people like Anthony Michael Hall in there and such for one season. And that was such like do a documentary like a 45-minute episode on that year of SNL would have been a lot more interesting. And get Anthony Michael Hall and get these other people and what happened and how was it? What was the frame of mind? That would be much more interesting than yet again another take on Chris Farley, his drugs, his dealing with drugs and obesity. It just felt like old hat. That's what I mean. It just felt like old hat. And they talk about how, Black Sheep wasn't the movie it was supposed to be. They don't go into detail, but let me say something. I think Black Sheep is a fun film. I don't understand why they did such a bad rap. Apparently, again, the people who made it. Like I said, they don't delve deep into it. They just mention Black Sheep. They mention Siskel and Ebert. They don't mention. They show a clip. I'm like, Siskel and Ebert didn't even like Tommy Boy. Like they didn't. That's not the base. And they're trying to really hone in on how Chris Farley felt insecure. His insecurities. He wasn't sure if people really enjoyed him or they just lied and enjoyed him. I mean, you got all that in I Am Chris Farley. That even though people said and told him the truth that he was the funniest guy, he still would not believe it himself that he was the funniest guy. Which is the tragic thing about Chris Farley. Is that he is and was one of the funniest guys, but even he didn't believe it himself. Now, again, if you're a hardcore and I'm a Chris Farley fan, so it was worth a watch at least to see. At the very beginning, there's a couple of audition tapes of older SNL, like Phil Hartman and John Belushi and so forth. I thought it was interesting how Melanie Hutsell mentioned how Chris Farley at one point romanticized Belushi's death, saying, "You know what? Something kind of cool about it." And they're like, "No, no, it was. There's nothing cool about it." That little detail, I didn't mind hearing. Some footage you haven't seen before, for example, two points of interest is the 1997 Planet Hollywood opening, where apparently Chris Farley got it and put all this milk on him, and you see him behind the scenes with people like Stephen Baldwin. And then there was another where he hosted SNL. And that's why I say, at the very least, like that wasn't talked about a whole lot from what I remember in the documentary of I Am Chris Farley. Is that when he hosted SNL, like people could tell he was not quite there. Like his energy wasn't the same. His voice was a bit deeper. I mean, I didn't think it was the train wreck as they're making it out to be when I see the clips. It's not like when Steven Seagal hosted SNL, but I just see what they mean by, okay, this is someone they knew or they grew up with or they've used to, and he's not acting the very same. And as Tom Arnold says, you need to be fat and clean, or you could be on drugs and thin, but you can't be fat and on drugs. You don't die quickly. That's sadly what happened. Like I said, Leif Garrett is in there because he met Chris Farley kind of a little bit before that. And you get to hear from Tom Farley, the one of the brothers. And Dave Foley, he narrates. Dave Foley, who was on the Kids in the Hall TV show. He's been a lot of other stuff. I think he was in Kids in the Hall, Dave Foley. He narrates it, just like Chris Jericho narrates Dark Side of the Ring. It's just, I mean, Vice, they're going in this direction of these dark side of comedy. I don't really see how much. Well, I guess I'm thinking in the future. I'm guessing they would do one on Phil Hartman, which I'm surprised they didn't do that in the first season, unless I missed it, because I was looking at the number of episodes. Maybe they did, I missed it. I mean, this wasn't. I think if I Am Chris Farley did not exist, this would be a lot more interesting. Because that one, yeah, you had a lot more people like David Spade and others who even more knew Chris, and it just seemed like a bigger deal of a documentary. And like I said, other than some bits of his hosting of SNL and a few other little things, like I said, if you're a massive Farley fan, you sure give it a look. But I don't know if you're really going to get a whole lot out of it. If you have seen the other one, it just seemed a bit. It just seemed a bit going over old news, if that makes sense. I mean, I think for the premiere episode, it should have been like a Phil Hartman, this nice guy, then the sad thing about what his wife did, and I think that would have made much more of a striking premiere episode on Phil Hartman, not on Chris Farley. Like I said, it just felt redundant is the word I'm looking for. And also, maybe I'm a bit more negative on this because Vice. I did watch bits of the other one out of curiosity, the Andrew Dice Clay one. That is a fucking piece of shit episode. Because I'll tell you, the dark side of Andrew Dice Clay, what happened? It's just that he was controversial and he said things people didn't like. And it was a woke episode. Like, Vice went woke with that episode. Andrew Dice Clay said some edgy stuff and nee 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 nee. Wah wah wah. He said the fucking crybaby bitches. Like I saw bits and pieces where, well, yeah, you just say some stuff that seems about race, but even if that's not your intention, that still means you're racist. That was some lady. I don't know who the hell she is. She looks like she weighs 5 pounds, and is about thin as an Ally McBeal, about as white as Casper the Friendly Ghost. And if that's the case, that would be like me calling fucking Richard Pryor racist because, oh, he did stand up and he pretended what a white guy sounded like. Oh my god, I'm offended. You know when Richard Pryor would do stand up and this is what a white guy talks like. I didn't get offended. I laughed because Richard Pryor was funny. Eddie Murphy and Eddie Murphy's Raw was funny. Like, and then there's this other person who I thought was RuPaul, but it's not. Had like 85 fucking piercings on their face. Be careful walking through a clothing store. You don't get your face ripped off, snad, and face ripped off Hellraiser style. Goddamn. Fucking jewelry store on her fucking face. There was a story of the SNL lady Nora Dunn, or whoever the hell, that I am not going to perform an SNL. I quit because Andrew Dice Clay is performing. And the lady was like, yeah, you go, girl. And you know what? You represent what us tough bitches are. Well, I mean, you are a bitch, and you're a nobody that no one fucking knows. I know I'm turning to rant on that, but it just Vice, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, I saw bits and pieces to be fair, but what I saw was just fucking stupid. He made jokes that made me feel bad. Fucking snowflakes. God damn it. But anyway, so maybe that's why. Like I see this episode and it's just redundant, and you saw it done better. And I'm Chris Farley. The Andrew Dice Clay was just a big old fucking woke episode with a couple women just get their panties in the twist and shout your way all the way out of the goddamn back to the fucking van down by the river. And I don't know what else to say. Just It's well produced in terms of editing, ways to put together. I'm sure you can find at least the Chris Farley one on YouTube. Type in the Dark Side of Comedy Chris Farley. I thought it was kind of random they got Dave Foley to narrate it. I'm like, Dave Foley? Okay. Sure, why not? But with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. And it's crazy that Tom Arnold probably came off as the best interview in this. So take that for what you will. So we'll see you guys later.